freedom of speech is not everybody gets to scream everything they want at all points in time. And if anybody tells you to be quiet, that all of a sudden your freedom of speech has been infringed upon.
But I would characterize you as broadly autocratic then on speech norms, if that's how it goes.
I have no idea at what point that part became autocratic. If the citizens of the United Kingdom didn't like it, they can either vote for different leadership or they can petition their members of parliament to change the way that travel restrictions are done.
Maybe it is, but is that not itself a deeply illiberal view?
They could have justified blocking you from the country on the same grounds, no?
The Republicans, they simply respond. They have no choice, like a child wandering through the forest looking for a candy bar. They have no choice but to just respond to what's happening.
Do these left-wing internet stars really need to be banned from the entire United Kingdom? A huge wrench was just thrown into the travel plans of progressive media stars Cenk Uyghur and Hasan Piker, the left-wing streamer, as the UK government rescinded their legal permission to enter the country ahead of planned trips. As the New York Times reports, the British Home Office publicly stated that they took this step because their presence in the country, quote, may not be conducive to the public good and was, quote, based solely on an assessment of the potential risk they may pose to public order. I'm a regular critic of Hasan Piker's extremism, and I have plenty of disagreements with Cenk as well, but I still find this ludicrous. Both of these progressives were specifically visiting the UK to participate in panels and debates, very much the lifeblood of democracy, and whether you love them or hate them, nobody can really deny their significant influence and impact on American and global politics. And the idea that they would have meaningfully posed a threat to public order is kind of ridiculous. They've both visited the United Kingdom before without spontaneous riots breaking out, and while countries certainly do have a legal right to deny entry to their country to certain visitors, this isn't even a good way to make those decisions. It essentially creates a heckler's veto, where anyone can become a threat to public order through no actual fault of their own if enough of their haters get together and engage in disruptions. Besides, all this censorship actually achieves is to make these figures look more sympathetic and to give them millions of dollars worth of free media publicity. Ask yourself this: if none of this had happened, would anybody be talking about Cenk's panel at South by Southwest London's conference? That said, both Cenk and Hasan have immediately blamed the restrictions they're facing entering the country on Israel and its supporters. But the story is more complicated than that. The UK regularly also bans far-right figures, and the actual minister who was responsible for this decision is herself an outspoken supporter of the Palestinian people. The whole thing is just an absolute mess, and it's just another piece in the puzzle that is the UK's slow and sad decline into authoritarianism and censorship. Other than that, though, they're doing amazing. That's just my take, and the debate is only just beginning. Joining me now to debate it all, we've got the liberal streamer and Hasan Piker hater, Steven Bonnell, aka Destiny, and the Reason Magazine journalist, Robby Soave. Let's get into it. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Nice to see you.
So let's talk about this, Steven, because you have a different take here. I've watched some of your content discussing this. I do appreciate the distinction that you raised between them having their visa waivers not approved or revoked rather than an actual visa. But I do imagine they will have similar problems. They'll similarly be deemed threats to public order if they try to get a full-fledged visa. Maybe we could start with Cenk and see if we could come to some agreement there, because I think the Hasan case gets more complicated. But are you supportive of or okay with the UK government saying, sorry, Young Turks, Cenk, you're not allowed, you're going to disrupt our public order?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple things we have to keep in mind. So first of all, having a visa waiver, rejected or that application or whatever terminated is a little different than having a visa rejected. Not to say that they would survive a visa process. It's possible they wouldn't. But I think it does matter to be correct on the things that we're saying.
I appreciated your accuracy that some of the media coverage just said visa revoked, and it's actually more complicated than that.
Or travel ban or ban from the country, whatever, sure. Which, and again, in effect, maybe their visas would get banned. But the second thing I think that is important to keep up is there is a difference between the freedom of speech that like a citizen has in their country versus does everybody else in the world have a right to go to your country and exercise their speech. I think these are meaningfully different things to consider. And if we are considering these things as different things, I mean, they're like the Palestine Action Group did a terrorist attack. They did a terrorism in the United Kingdom, and Hasan is watching it on his stream and cheering it on. I'm not sure if Cenk was. I'm sure if he saw it, he probably would have as well. But I mean, like, these two are obviously contributing to an extremely hostile climate. I think that if a country is like, I don't really know if I want to host that type of foreign speaker in my country right now, especially on an expedited travel basis, I think a country has the right to do that. And I think it's pretty easily defensible with regards to these two.
But can we draw a line between Cenk and Hasan just for a moment? Cenk is always advocating for nonviolence and does not explicitly endorse designated terror groups the way that Hasan does. So I think the Hasan thing is slightly different. Cenk is he just has opinions that people don't like. He says things people don't like. He was specifically going there to debate and to argue with people. And yet you have a government coming in. You don't see that you see that as totally fine.
I mean, I haven't prepared like special comments for Cenk, but watching Cenk and Anna over the past year, they have completely devolved into the full-on like Jews control everything, and maybe 9/11 was done by the Jews, and Tucker Carlson did a really good take on whether the Jews were controlling the government. Like, I don't know. I mean, if
they
that's
say
the thing,
Israel, not Jews control everything.
And those aren't calls to violence, right? Those are kooky. I don't agree with those opinions. I have been in conversations with those people. Routinely, I hear arguments about the level of influence, is that everything is motivated by Israel derangement syndrome, everything is motivated by Israel. I certainly reject that view. I think it's a legitimate view to engage with and should be engaged with and should be argued against when these people are making it. But even that is well short of an idea that they are calling for violence or that their presence will cause violence, which is really the UK government's argument. And that argument, if we allow that, is just a heckler's veto. Legally, they're within their rights. We don't disagree on that. It's not a country that has the First Amendment. The sorts of legal rights to people not within the country to speak within the country. Sure, they can rescind whoever they want. But if we're proponents of liberal values, I think we should believe that it is wrong on like a philosophical basis to have a principle whereby if people behave badly or are going to cause harm or violence or property destruction, be in response to or because of a legitimate viewpoint being expressed, we're just going to end up with those people winning every time. The people who want to do harm.
Steven, could you not see this heckler's veto being applied to you traveling to the UK, right? You're somebody who people have very strong feelings about. Some people love you, some people hate you. If enough people got together and were going to disrupt public order because you were going to do an event in the UK, which I think you did not too long ago, they could have justified blocking you from the country on the same grounds, no?
Sure, but I don't know if I mean, I would probably feel different because I would feel like my rhetoric doesn't necessarily directly contribute to it, but I also don't know how much I would fight on those grounds. I mean, like, the other country has the right to decide if you're allowed to travel to that country or not. If I was getting deplatformed in a similar manner in the United States, I would have a huge issue with it, but I don't have a right to the United Kingdom. I don't have a right to
their
platforms.
Well, they have the right to block people. That doesn't mean they're justified or it's fair or it's consistent with liberal values.
Well, sure, but I mean, like, if they feel like my presence in that country would lead to a more hectic, violent, whatever atmosphere, like Hasan and Cenk, like, obviously their rhetoric is incredibly inflammatory, is pushing people in that direction.
Yours can be too at times, Steven.
Sure, that's fine. And if they decided that they didn't want to host my speech in their country because they had that feeling, I mean, that's within their right to do so. I don't know if I would fight that much on the grounds that I have a right to that other country's platform. That feels pretty...
Is entering a country a platform? And aren't you also depriving the rights of the people there who wanted to have them at their events and wanted to speak with them? You're saying
entering a country is absolutely, yes, is like their platform, of course. Whether or not a country decides to accept you into their sovereign state, I mean...
Just the platform is the only thing. Obviously, they have a sovereign state. They can decide who comes in and out, but you're not getting a platform by being allowed in the United Kingdom.
Well, I mean, you're going to speak on a physical platform. What do you mean? I mean, you're going to go to that country to have a speech. If the country itself didn't matter, you just do it remote, right? Do it from the United States.
Which they probably will end up doing. But Robby, I'll bring you in here. Give us your take. Because you made the case that while you disagree with Hasan, I think you and I have similar views on him, you support their right to go there and do this.
Yeah, I mean, your monologue was excellent. I share those sentiments completely. Unsurprisingly, you and I have similar views on most issues. But yeah, I think we're not arguing about the legal right. Certainly, they can place restrictions on who enters their country, and they are not bound by the First Amendment. But I think the First Amendment and free speech protections are a good philosophical practice for countries that purport to spread liberal Enlightenment Western values. America descends from the English tradition to some extent, and I would characterize a nation that has very broad restrictions on free speech based on nebulous. I mean, this language, I don't know how you can describe it as anything other than Orwellian, and I know everyone calls everything Orwellian, and it's very obnoxious, but they said may not be conducive to the public good. I mean, if that's really the law of the day, they could, I think then, under that basis, really restrict a whole lot of speech that is in the public, that I would argue is in the public benefit, that ought to be debated. I think at some point, if that's your highest priority, anything that could threaten the public good, no matter how broadly defined by us, the government, or me, the Home Secretary, I'm by no means an expert on the composition of Britain's government, but I would characterize you as broadly autocratic then on speech norms, if that's how it goes. And I think that's unfortunate and something we want to argue against and say they shouldn't do that. And it is better for the country, for the debate, for a debate on Israel or whatever they want to debate to be had. And in fact, I would submit that it does not risk public order at all. That there was zero
probably
chance
not.
Well, so
of public order being disrupted by Hasan or Cenk being there.
So plenty of people go to the UK to stir trouble up. Like, it's a pretty common thing that'll happen between the United Kingdom, between Sweden and Norway. I know that Tommy Robinson likes to travel around and do things. I know there's a guy, I don't remember all their names, I don't follow European public law, but people will go to another country, they'll do their inflammatory speeches, their Bible burning, their Quran burning or whatever to stir trouble up or whatever. When we're talking about restrictions on free speech, we're talking about restricting who might be allowed to enter a country on a visa right now. I don't think we've gotten into free speech restrictions. These are things that we would have like as applied to the citizens of our country. If you want to get into broader concepts about like, is it good for debate or whatever, I mean, like both of these people are illiberal people that don't believe in liberal democracy in the first place. And the idea of saying that a country, a democratic country who still has all of their leaders democratically elected, having certain restrictions on who can enter the country, I have no idea at what point that part became autocratic. If the citizens of the United Kingdom didn't like it, they can either vote for different leadership or they can petition the members of parliament to change the way that travel restrictions are done. But I mean, like, is your perspective that every single type of speaker, ought to be allowed to the United Kingdom to give, whatever speech they want as long as they're not directly calling for violence?
Probably.
Yeah.
With that caveat you added, I mean, I would say that the onus is on the government or the relative of the people who approve the visa, again, just to visit, not to become a citizen, not to live there, but to visit and give a speech. The onus is on them to clear some high bar of saying we should not have this person in our country at all. And even for someone like Tommy Robinson, you would argue that there are followers of him and there is violence that follows him where he goes. So maybe there you conclude differently, although we would end up debating that. But here is a case where that bar is clearly not even met. And so this speaks to like this validates a slippery slope concern about how this will be used, not just for some exceptional cases where violence in the streets might actually be reasonably anticipated because of this person, and thus there's a greater government justification, but for Hasan Piker and Cenk Uyghur, who no one will, I think there's so little chance that anyone will commit any violence because
they visited before with no violence, like a year ago or two.
Right.
So, Steven,
I mean,
which is why
there are people who have drunk drive. You can drunk drive and not get into a car accident. I don't know what the point is of saying that they visited a year ago and nothing happened. If the British government has made this determination, that's the determination they've made.
Based
I don't
on
see
what,
a slippery
though,
slope
Steven?
here.
They give you no information. They don't give you they don't lay out what you did or didn't do. They just vaguely
with
tell
all due
you
respect,
this.
You're an American citizen. Why? You have no right to that information. And the United Kingdom has decided that even their people don't have that information printed publicly. This is a democracy. If they want to change that process, the people have every right to petition their members of parliament to change the way that process works. But there's been a
That's an
process
excuse that would justify any action by a democratic government. Well, they can do it, and if people don't like it, they can just vote to change it. It's a little more complicated.
I'm pushing back specifically on the idea that it's autocratic, or you personally, as an American citizen, might feel aggrieved that there's not a reason stated publicly for it. But I mean, that is the way the British process goes. And I mean, if we want to get into more of the substance on it, at the very least, Hasan has openly praised terrorist groups that are doing terrorism in the United Kingdom. So I mean, if you were ever going to restrict somebody coming into your country to speak, then yeah, I mean,
but I guess my question is, though, do you? It seems like you're not acknowledging the aspect, the extent to which something like this also infringes upon the rights of UK residents, in that they had events planned. There's a group of people there that want these people to speak. They want to host an event. They want to be associated with these people. They've invested large amounts of money to fly these people in, to sign documents, to pay them speaker fees, to host a big event. And at the last minute, the British government comes in and denies them their visa waiver and just screws up the whole thing. You're acting like it's just Hasan who's facing any sort of consequence from the government here. They're telling them you're not allowed to have the speaker you want at your event. That is an infringement. You could say it's justified, but it is one, no?
I mean, then it would be an infringement on the British population that has decided that this is the process by which visas go for, that, you know, they're allowed in even if they wouldn't survive the process normally. I mean, freedom of speech is not everybody gets to scream everything they want at all points in time. And if anybody tells you to be quiet, that all of a sudden your freedom of speech has been infringed upon. Like we're talking about people visiting the country on visa waiver programs, and the British government has the right, as given to them by the people, that they are allowed to restrict certain people. They feel like it would not be conducive to the public good, and they made that decision for these two people. I think personally, there's plenty of good reason to feel that way. If the citizens of the United Kingdom feel aggrieved by this, there are channels by which they can make their voice heard on that.
All right, Robby. So I will press you a little bit on what Steven was about to get into. Mm-hmm. I think with Cenk, I would say I do view it as substantively different than with Hasan. But Hasan, so if we were talking about, like, we all agree that a country has the right to restrict people from coming in. You and I are saying, at least, we don't think that should be done based on your perspective or your viewpoint. But even neutral criteria, such as must not support a designated terror group. And you could actually name multiple that Hasan has explicitly supported, at least in regards to the UK, but also US designated terror groups. Couldn't you justify denying him on that basis, Robby?
I mean, I suppose I am not a scholar of every single comment Hasan Piker has ever made. I have heard him say plenty of things that I think are contemptible. I think he simps for authoritarian regimes is my major criticism of him. There is a difference between thinking groups designated as terrorists have some legitimate grievance or should be able to militate for their right. I mean, this issue as applied to the Palestinian issue versus Israel is at least somewhat complicated, right? The proponents of the Palestinian cause say that Palestinians in Gaza have been mistreated by Israel and don't have an ability to form their own state, or and so on. And so we all know the contours of this argument, right? To evince sympathy for them or then be on their side in their conflict, even their armed and violent conflict with Israel. Do I agree with that perspective? No. I think that dramatically oversimplifies things. I think the terrorist actions taken by Hamas against Israel are wrong. I've condemned them many times. I'm not someone in this category at all, but look, I concede it is difficult. It is people who've been fighting over a stretch of land for hundreds and thousands of years and have been wronging each other in a variety of ways. And I think it is a little bit suspect to say, okay, the sympathy for this extremist here cannot be justified in any case. I mean, I would like to hear the debate, frankly, because people do bring good points when they talk about the mistreatment of Palestinians by Israel. And then Israel brings good point. The pro on that side brings good points for how the Hamas and even just the Palestinians have been totally unreasonable in vis-a-vis this conflict. So I would not concede based on that okay, we can't hear that perspective.
Okay.
Or that
here, wait, just as a couple things. So you keep saying I want to hear the debate. Neither of these people really do much debates. I don't know why we keep saying that. These people,
they were going there for Oxford debates, no?
Is it for a debate or to give a speech?
It was a variety of things. One of the things would have been a Piers Morgan appearance, which I know you've done, Steven, many times, and it would have been against Shabbos
Kestenbaum,
who's a pretty spirited defender of the Israeli cause.
Sure.
I don't know, it would have
Yeah,
been.
So
Steven, Cenk does do debates. Maybe Hasan
Cenk kind
doesn't.
of does, if you call them that or whatever. Cenk does debates the way that people think I do debates, where you just scream at the other guy for 50 minutes until you're crying yourself to sleep. Piers can be done remote, though. He doesn't have to be in the UK to do that. But just to be crystal clear, when I talk about supporting terrorist groups, there is a group called Palestine Action that did a terrorist attack in the United Kingdom, where they broke into the RAF Air Force Base or whatever in order to sabotage planes because they felt like they were being used to support the genocide. And Hasan openly watched these people on stream cheering them on. Later, this group was literally designated as a terrorist group. If you're going to cheer people like this on, how could you possibly be surprised when a government doesn't allow you, especially an expedited basis, into their country? That's super fair. And then also when we said it's a little suspect to ban like the pro-Palestinian people, the UK has designated more radical Israelis as being persona non gratas as well. I think Smoltrich and Ben-Gvir were two of, I think, 11 recently that were marked as like, I don't know if they sanctioned them or whatever else, but I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to travel into the country either. So it's not like it's just on the poor, innocent pro-Palestinian people.
I agree with you on that, and I would push back on framing by Cenk or Hasan that this is like only about censoring criticism of Israel. But I would tend to object to the censorship of the other people you mentioned as well, or people of a far-right persuasion or a pro-Israel persuasion. I would say they should.
That's fine, but this very naive, like childlike view of free speech, where everybody just screams at each other, this is not working. It hasn't worked for at least the last decade. Nothing is furthered on this conversation anywhere. The vast majority of the super pro-Palestinian people probably can't even find it on a map. So the idea that like just more debate and more people with unlimited access to countries being able to fundraise millions of dollars, because both these guys are millionaires, while they just sit and preach to a choir that they get continually radicalized and stirred up while never doing anything bad themselves, for people to come out and be like, oh, well, it's just the marketplace of ideas and they're not directly inciting violence, is a little bit crazy, I think.
We'll let Robby respond to that.
But is that not itself, maybe it is, but is that not itself a like deeply illiberal view? I mean, in a First Amendment, and I know we're talking about the UK, which does not have the First Amendment, so we're really not talking about the legal protections or what it has to be. But our First Amendment, which I hold to be a really wonderful bulwark of free speech and of liberal principles, is based on a philosophy, or at least it has been expanded upon its mythology, on the idea that speech and debate is good, even if it's painful or uncomfortable, or we cry ourselves to every night after participating in it or listening to it. And in a First Amendment context, this question would be very clear. No, Hasan's mere support for or siding with or love of terrorists who are actually doing violence would certainly be First Amendment protected speech. So in the American context, that would be very clear.
There are First Amendment protections for people traveling to our country?
No, he's not saying that.
I'm saying if he was in the country as a citizen, it would protect that. I mean,
it would protect him from the government infringing upon it. It wouldn't protect him from some.
They wouldn't be able to shut down his speech at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas.
No, but South by Southwest could shut it down if they wanted to, not platform him for some.
But they wanted him in London.
That's fine. I'm just saying that we're talking about the First Amendment here, which was explicitly and specifically about government restrictions on speech, because we could see the problems with that. But that doesn't mean that everybody needs to be screaming at everybody on every platform and guaranteed access everywhere, especially when most of these people are highly illiberal individuals themselves that do not have open platforms where they celebrate freedom of speech. This is very much a paradox of intolerance thing, where you're allowing people that are increasingly reluctant to platform other views or engage with other views, who just want to take advantage of the naive version of freedom of speech, where it's just people screaming at each other all day and pretending that something's happening there. Like, where are these amazing freedom of speech debates happening right now on the planet? Where have they happened for the past 5 years?
Oxford Union actually does great debates.
I think
and they were traveling
is hosting some pretty good debates featuring...
And Brad versus the World as well.
So Oxford Union is a highly moderated platform. I don't know why you would go with that one. This is literally like 3 minutes here, 3 minutes there. This is not people screaming at each other, number one. Number two, Piers Morgan, I think if the Founding Fathers saw that the First Amendment was Piers Morgan, I think we would have had 9 amendments in the Bill of Rights.
They also supported the Alien and Sedition Act, so I'm not sure that goes too far.
But I'm just saying that
they will come at you though, because you're criticizing people for being illiberal. I mean, the response will be, well, you're being illiberal for saying their speech should be. I mean, not that you're like saying chill their speech, but you're siding with the people who are chilling their speech. So then we just have this race to, well, I'm silencing or fine with the silencing of my enemies. You're fine with the silencing of me, and we like very quickly slippery slope our way out of any free speech norms whatsoever.
I'd be totally fine. I'd be totally fine with
screaming at each other, not necessarily productive for debate.
I think everybody on the slippery slope is better than just some people on the slippery slope. And right now, it's only the center left that seems to be on the slippery slope. So the idea of like, well, I mean, I'm already demonetized on YouTube because of statements that Jesse Waters decided to, take for me and air out on Fox News and everything.
I'm banned from Twitch. That. I think I've written several times about your being banned from various platforms. Saying, while obviously you and I would both agree, permitted, the platforms are not obligated to do whatever. Still not being good for speech norms, I would say.
That's fine, but you know who doesn't share your views are the MAGA people or the far left people like Hasan.
But what's the relevance of that, though?
The relevance is that a system cannot survive other people that are looking to infect and take advantage of your system and only allow you rights when it's convenient to them.
But so then people are... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robby.
I hear what you're saying, but may not be conducive to the public good. The rationale they're using here. I have a hard time believing you're not at least a little bit uncomfortable with that coming to cover things that your speech or the speech of people you would think legitimately should be given up.
When it comes to travel, I mean, like, do you think that, I'm a pretty radical dude. I made fun of a lot of bongers. Like, if I got rejected and I wasn't allowed to travel to the UK, I think I'd probably get it. I don't know how much of now, if this was happening in my country and the government was trying to restrict my speech or something, I would have a lot to say about it. But going to another country is, to some extent, it's a privilege. They're allowing you into their country. And what's more, allowing me to go and speak there on media, I think is a pretty radical, that's a pretty liberal Western idea thing. Like, it's a pretty cool thing. If they want to have some restrictions on it, I think that they're super welcome to do so. And right now, the only people that are benefiting in this, again, this very naive, libertarian-esque dream world of infinite free speech, the only people benefiting here are the people who are highly coordinated and highly malicious in the background, which are unfortunately, in the United States, it's the entire conservative apparatus. And then on the left, it's the tankies and the Marxist-Leninists. These people have no appreciation for the First Amendment. They never engage in marketplace of idea stuff, or if they do, it's facetiously done. And it's the second they have any kind of control over their areas, they're not going to extend the same grace. So why would you allow this grace to be extended to them just so that they can destroy you? There is no virtue in that. There's no free speech in that. It's not even being done for liberal ends. It's being done to feel good about ourselves as all of our platforms are destroyed, and then these people slowly take over, which is all that's happened over the past decade. Speech hasn't gotten better, even though we have more access to the internet than ever before. Yeah.
It's not as if, you keep saying this about traveling to the country, it's not as if this is the first sketchy possible violation or censorship of someone in connection to the UK that's ever taken place, and there's some otherwise sterling record. A lot of people have been flagging concerns about the UK cracking down on controversial or speech deemed hateful in a online context, and people on all sides of the political spectrum, people sharing allegedly racist rap lyrics or racially suggestive rap lyrics to Christian preachers and all that. I think this should worry us. Like, the principle does matter. If you don't care about the principle, you don't care about the principle. But then you shouldn't stand up and say that we're so alarmed by the erosion of liberal principles. Like, what's left? Like you say, it feels good, but it feels good because it's right. Because it's right to defend the speech rights of people, even if they're awful people or their ideas are awful. Sure. Or else it's just whoever's in charge bans whatever they want. And I think we would miss this freewheeling conversation type thing we can do under a extremely protective free speech norms if it was down to, well, the government can ban it for the public good to this degree.
Yeah, so the idea that liberal principles exist in this vacuum that have to be adhered to at all points in time for self-justifying reasons that's a myth, right? The reason why we champion things like liberal principles or democratic values is because we think that they achieve some end, that it's the maximal expression of human freedom, of intellectual thought, of the evolution of all of these things together to create better governments, more perfect unions, whatever else. But if entertaining these ideas can be done in ways that ultimately lead to their destruction, which they would, to some extent in the United States, they have, with the way that the current administration is approaching all of our freedoms. And no amount of this hand-wringing that people will do over liberals is ever going to hold the far right to account in the United States. It hasn't. And the same thing could be said for the ML types that are on Hasan's side right now. These people have no respect for freedom of speech. You're not seeing them going to, Islamist groups or to Muslim, whatever, majority governments or countries or monarchies and saying, you guys need to open up your stuff to democracy. They say, well, the reason why they hate hate the gays is because America dropped too many bombs on them.
But Steven, when I hear you say this, this is the same logic of every would-be censor. We can't allow those ideas
this is
because
such
they
a, it has to
endanger
be,
free
there
speech.
has to be, I pray one day the libs will escape this weird thing of like, it's the silliest nirvana fallacy of like, but if we do any regulation at all, it's all going to be regulated into nothing. The speech environment that we live in right now, I don't know if you recognize it or not yet, is unsustainable.
It's legally
on the road
intensely
to
protected.
No. Right now, the speech environment we're in right now is we are on the road to oblivion. Do you recognize that?
What do you mean by speech environment? Our politics is getting worse and is terrible.
The politics is downstream from bots on X everywhere, from people cultivating and curating their own audiences and then convincing them of things that aren't real, of people that are refusing to engage with the other side in any way, size, shape, or form because they have their own little protected spaces. Like all of this can be done under the umbrella of liberal principles.
You support not allowing people to engage with other perspectives and
These
groups they
people
want to talk
don't engage,
to.
though. Hasan and
Cenk
Cenk
does
Uyghur
all the time. He
he'll
does
go
all
on
the
to
time.
Piers Morgan and scream at people, but these people, by and large, don't engage. Go and look at the conversations. Hey, when was the last thought-provoking conversation Cenk had with any pro-Israel or Zionist guy or anti-Hamas guy? Right? You can't name a single one. It's just
you might
screaming
not
at.
Like it, but he talks to people and debates people all the time.
I can state objectively, because I'm confident enough to do so, and you should be as well, because I know you and I know that you're a smart man. You cannot say just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's not a good debate. And look at two people that are screaming at each other. I mean, Cenk cries in half of his debates
are pretty bad, but some of them are somewhat constructive, and it's better than people not talking to each other at all or giving somebody the arbitrary power to start deciding which perspectives are allowed.
Where is this arbitrary power? It's a democratically elected government. We trust
a democratically elected government can absolutely wield out arbitrary powers when it's decided by administrative officials or edicts.
The FCC is appointed by President Trump and confirmed by Congress, all democratically elected people, and is doing actions that I think are very bad and I've criticized many times.
Yeah, but they're not done autocratically. Unfortunately, the American public voted on it. It's not like Trump came out of nowhere.
The democratic nature isn't a defense of the action.
Well, I'm saying that it's a defense of the action insofar as you keep saying that it's like some random person that can arbitrarily do a thing. It's not. These are democratic institutions that
the
are
Home
still
Secretary just has to say, you'll disrupt our public order with no rationale or reasoning or anything. Yeah, that's pretty arbitrary.
Okay, do you think that they should automatically have to accept every person into their country who wants to travel there for 90 days?
I think they should have ideologically neutral criteria based on which they allow visitors or non-visitors.
What isn't ideologically neutral about disrupt the public?
A criminal because it's so subjective, and they clearly think that just some people's opinions constitute that.
What do you mean? Of course, opinion. Hold on. Nazism was an opinion before it was a political party, and then a governing thing, and then the World War II Germany. Everything starts as an opinion.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
I think some crazy speaker who wants to come there and advocate for the virtues of Nazism to some group should be allowed into the country.
Okay, that's fine that you think so, but you're saying that if a country can't restrict anything at all,
well, can and should are different.
Actual violence, to be clear,
they should. Yeah.
The fear that they're articulating here is that there will be public disorder, like property destruction, people getting punched or stabbed or run over. Restrict that. Arrest people for doing that. Fight that. That is fine. That they should do that. And in a U.S. context, if a speaker, because of the First Amendment, if a speaker is going to speak, and then as a result, the students, or it's on a campus or something, a radical activists say we're going to crash this and we're going to start a riot if that person speaks, they actually have an obligation then to provide enough security to make sure the thing goes as intended and no one gets hurt, because we take the First Amendment philosophy so seriously, and because we never want to give power to the people, the illiberals, who are saying, if you speak, we will meet it with violence, so you must stop that person from speaking. I mean, I'd say that's a good policy in general. I don't think, and with Nazis, I hate to make everything about Nazis, but I've interviewed Nadine Strawson before, a former head of the ACLU, and she will say, as a descendant of Holocaust survivors, the problem was not allowing too much speech or debate on those subjects. It was not arresting people for arresting Nazis for engaging in violence and burning down people's homes and actually activating a reign of terror and violence.
I think we've also seen
about speech, not violence. Violence should be met with state force and arrest.
I also think we've seen that censoring these people doesn't make them go away. If you look at somebody like Nick Fuentes, who's become the phenomenon that he has, I think the fake, well, and not totally fake, genuinely bad things have been done to him, but some of it is fake, like victimhood and forbidden fruit status of him as some edgelord that you're not allowed to see is a huge part of his appeal. And I guess I'll throw it back to you like this, Stephen. I mean, the net effect of the UK's decision here that you're supporting has been to generate a massively sympathetic news cycle and detention to Cenk and Hasan that would not have happened if they'd just gone there and done their events with probably no public disruption like the other times and come home. They've gotten, I don't know, millions to tens of millions of dollars worth of free positive media coverage, mostly, even from folks that don't actually like them or their views, but just don't like them being blocked from engaging in free speech. I mean, would you acknowledge that at least this seems to have backfired?
I genuinely wish I could get banned from visiting the UK for my subscriber numbers.
It would, yes. No, Stephen, do you dispute that?
It's not relevant to the conversation, though. I'm sure he got a lot of free media, especially in the United States, where we again have the most naive views of the First Amendment and freedom of speech over here. That
the best views.
I mean, you say that as the president of the United States is on a rampage to destroy the entire Western world order.
And as he's repeatedly checked in the courts by First Amendment law and precedent.
That's so crazy because the gas station down the street didn't get the memo on that, Brad. I didn't know that. You should tell the people that are shipping the gas here that he's checked all the time, or all the $280 billion in
free
tariffs.
Speech, not gas prices.
We're talking about the evolution of the American system of infinite debate and infinite speech, and nobody can do or say anything about who should be platform anywhere. Blah 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 has delivered us to this point, and something is clearly not working. And I think
I think the opposite has delivered us to that point. We lived through a decade where people were constantly deplatformed and canceled, and that backfired, and the backlash to that is part of how we got Trump 2.0.
Who was deplatformed and canceled? Sargon of Akkad?
No, I mean, Robby wrote a whole book about this, so I'll bring you in here, but there's many examples.
Let me just to respond to the other point. You also have to be careful because there are legal distinctions, there are moral and ethical distinctions, and there are philosophical distinctions. When you talk about Nick Fuentes being deplatformed or whatever, I'm not aware of any action the government took against Fuentes. I think that was generally private platforms, maybe banks. I don't know how true that is. I know he got banned from an airline, but it was because he was fighting with an attendant, not because of any weird Jewish conspiracy thing. Like, these are actions that private corporations are taking, which I imagine you guys might. You defend the right to do it, maybe not on the First Amendment.
I might disagree with them doing it. And in the case of Nick Fuentes, I think that declaring him persona non grata and taking all his platforms away, same, they tried to do this to Alex Jones.
So this wasn't the government, though, right?
I'm not saying that it was.
Okay. Yeah. Alex Jones has been severely harmed, right?
Well, he became a bigger figure, and then eventually was held accountable through lawsuits and other things that tore him down. But he didn't go away back in 2017 or whatever when they banned him from Facebook and YouTube. He kept being an influential figure, and
so you shouldn't ban anybody. Basically, is that unless they're literally saying go murder a person? Everybody is.
Yeah, I think you should have very, very limited, ideologically neutral content moderation based on I do believe that.
Steven's right that the kind of things we're talking about, every case is different.
Yes.
There are cases of people whining about getting banned from social media where, okay, well, you violated the terms of service. I don't know what you want. But then on the other hand, there are cases where we found out later that, for instance, the government was far more involved, the FBI and the CDC in pressuring social media sites to take down content and to deplatform people way more than I thought at the time. And I'm a conspiratorial libertarian. I should have suspected that. That was very bad. So it runs a range of things. I would just submit that, and look, not everything is perfect about the era of information spreading we live in. There's certainly more abject falsehoods likely to spread because there's no central control whatsoever over what people hear. But of course, if the central authority was spreading something obviously wrong, as maybe Steven thinks the administration would be through its official channels, we would be glad that there is no easy way at a time where in many cases, business people who are friendly to Trump, either because they're in ideological agreement or frankly just because they don't want their other companies regulated and need to suck up to him, which is bad, but they feel that way. So they are buying up media companies and making them friendlier to Trump and which gives them less market power and control over the narrative than ever before, because it's just way too vast, man. There's just way too much information coming from from social media and YouTube and what we're doing and what all of us are doing in a variety of different projects. There's no one person who's beholden to Trump for whatever reason in charge of it. And that is a really good thing that I'm thankful for in this wild era.
How is half of our media ecosystem enslaved to Trump then in the mainstream and alternative media sphere in the United States?
There are people who agree with him. You said it's a democracy. There's
They just happen to agree. So they agreed that he was going to be the president of No New Wars, and now they all agree that he wants to go to war with Iran and that we kidnap people from Venezuela. They were the people who agreed with free markets, and now they agree with tariffs on the world, and now they agree with no tariffs.
Who are you asking? The voters in America? I mean, they're turning on Trump, and he's going to get killed in the midterms for violating some of those programs, but they also dislike Democrats very profoundly. I understand them. I dislike Democrats very profoundly and also dislike Trump and don't know what to do about it.
Aren't there other media figures, Steven, that are revolting? I mean, and whatever you think of these people, and I have my different issues with all of them, but Candace, Tucker, Megyn Kelly, Sean Kelly, Joe Rogan, all these people went from supporting Trump very vociferously in 2024 to being harshly critical of him. So they're not like in a MAGA, even if you don't like where they are going, they're clearly not in a Trump cult.
They were nibbling around the edges, or they have been nibbling around the edges as the Trump coalition falls apart, but they've happily ridden these waves for 5+ years.
But they've turned on against him harshly now.
Yeah, well, as he's starting to lose political power, and then it'll be the next thing that people jump on.
But so clearly it's not half the media is a MAGA cult, because they wouldn't be doing that. They would still be supporting him hardcore.
Go ask any of those people. Yes, but my point is it
changed.
You want a MAGA cult proof? You ask any of them. Do you think that Kamala would have been a better president than Trump yet? None of them will say yes. That's a MAGA cult.
Okay, but if they're still calling him a war criminal and bashing him publicly, I don't think you could say it's in a cult. They're still influenced by partisanship and tribalism and wouldn't want to say Kamala. I get that point, but that doesn't mean they're in a hardcore cult.
These people also think that Obama and Bush
would be a better president than Trump.
That's fine. I understand. You cited the Twitter files earlier. You haven't read them. I understand. This is how it goes. But I'm just saying that
I didn't vote for either of them.
The idea that the media ecosystem of people just screaming at each other, when that's not how these ecosystems are working at all. They're heavily curated on these private platforms, and no amount of freedom of speech is letting anybody break through on anything. We're having measles outbreaks in the United States of America, and my head of Health and Human Services is drinking methylene blue to purify his body while he does pull-ups in jeans. And that's like, something is not working right now.
But I would actually submit... I'd submit that kind of quackery rose in part because of the heavy-handed censorship or de facto censorship, shut up and do what the experts tell you, that we had in the COVID era. I mean, so I'm actually curious, and I know it's a little bit of a wormhole or rabbit hole we could go down. You're not bothered at all by anything in the Twitter files or the Facebook files?
This is the issue that I have. I've realized this recently, that we're in an adult-child world where the Democrats are treated as adults and the Republicans are children. So what you're telling me right now is the Dems are adults. They have to be better than everybody and better than everything. And if they make a mistake, they have to own it. They have to do every single thing they can in order to right the ship from the wrongs that they've caused it to happen. But the Republicans, they simply respond. They have no choice, like a retarded child wandering through the forest looking for a candy bar. They have no choice but to just respond to what's happening.
Well,
so
hang on.
Wait. You talked to me about, was it too heavy-handed on what they did with COVID and everything else? I would say probably, yeah. It seems like a lot of the companies felt that way as well because they walked back on it. However, at the time, there was a global pandemic that nobody really knew what was going to come from it or what to do with it. So I'm a little bit sympathetic to the people that messed up at the time and maybe went too far. You know what I'm not sympathetic towards, though, are people who give this bullshit excuse of, well, people had to respond this way to censorship. Excuse me, where's the response to Trump's censorship? Show me Biden talking to the FEC head that some people need to be kicked out of the media, or show me Biden personally ordering around Merrick Garland.
On your first point, though, I think you're confusing me describing a phenomenon with saying it's justified. I don't think it is justified that because people were lied to about COVID vaccines or misinformed about COVID vaccines or pressured and all this stuff was overhanded, that now they don't trust the measles vaccine.
But that's where they're at.
Yes, but you're misunderstanding. I don't think that's correct.
I'm not misunderstanding. I love to live out. But that's not what's happening. Something else is happening. They're being lied to. The reality is, and listen, I used to be a free speech absolutist as much as anybody can be, but I realized that every time I make big free speech arguments, I am always in bad company. 5% of the people, I'll assume you too are part of the 5%, are like, I think that freedom of speech or marketplace of ideas is good and it's the best way to further ideas and to have this debate, et cetera, et cetera. 95% just want to lie with impunity. And that's where we're at. And if the 5% can't realize that, then they're just like leading the train where the tracks go right off a cliff, and they seem to not be aware of the 400 wagons behind them that are filled with Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and Robert Malones and RFK Juniors and Dr. Oz's and Joe Rogan's and pounds of ivermectin and everything else. And that just is insane to me. Well, I just, as a question, I guess, for either of you, where is the response to all of the lies and misinformation that Trump and everybody else has told? Where is the massive pro-vaccine movement or the massive pro-government movement because Doge didn't find any waste, fraud, or abuse? So where's the massive movement to go, oh, I guess government is perfect because they could find nothing? Where are those people at?
We have been, me speaking for some libertarians in some organized fashion, dear God.
Wait, before you go off,
I've been relentlessly critical.
I don't care.
Let him answer your question.
No, because people always go, well, I did this thing. Well, I don't care. It's not about you. Song's not about you. All the MAGA people who are supposedly, descriptively, acting this way as a response to the other thing. Tell me they're not retarded children in a forest looking for a candy bar. I'm trying to find out, why don't they respond the same way to Trump? I don't care what you personally, I assume you're a decently intelligent person. Brad's brought you to the show. I would hope so. But why doesn't everybody else respond that way?
You can't say that about everybody I bring on the show, but Robby, in Robby's case, absolutely.
Our party system is very bad, and it is people people really dislike one side or the other, and it is hard to actualize when you are disappointed or disagree with something your person does, and actualize that politically whatsoever when it means voting for the other person who has tons of policies that you're morally opposed to or don't like. There's nothing for you to do, and so people feel like they need to double down and ignore that kind of stuff, or even be converted to it. I don't think that's a failing of our speech norms, though, to get to the conversation at hand. I think that's a defect of our uniquely American two-party system, the winner-take-all dynamics, various things of that I actually would not defend, and would be a rare case of me saying that, like, other countries do it somewhat better, where you like have a range of options and they form little coalitions. And in some countries where, if your party gets 5% of the vote, then they have 5% of the representation, and you actually achieve something or whatever. Like, our system doesn't work like that, and it's something our founders got wrong. But I would not say that about our ironclad support for the First Amendment, which to me is very good, and that these problems are not responsible of that or caused by that.
All right, guys. Well,
I just one more time. Where is the response to the right? I don't understand how that was.
I would say this: it's already in the polling. Trump's polling terribly. It's getting worse. There's going to be a huge backlash.
Term. After all the Jan 6 stuff, after all the weird Russia stuff, after all the...
Somebody who was, like, not older, he was too old to be president. That's the backfire there. I mean, that was a really bad choice they made.
Democrats should have been able to resurrect vampire Hitler and nominate him, and he should have won over Trump. The fact that guy got a second term who says to this day that the 2020 election was stolen, that we can't even talk about Russia anymore because the libs got so mind-f***ed thinking they have Trump derangement syndrome, and conservatives know that there's way more there that they never want to address. The anti-vax stuff and the attack against our public health, the attack against our educational institutions. I'm just, when the response is going to be, wow, we sweep the midterms and the next Democratic president wins 55% of the vote to 45%. That's crazy. In my mind, that's just crazy to me. That's just
all right.
wild.
Well, the response, I think the response is in the polling and in that democratic process. And I agree. A lot of this goes to bigger issues about our polarized society and two-party system and partisan politics. But I appreciate hashing it all out with both of you guys. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Cool.